Hello, this is Mr. Gretzky 9966. Just coming to you with a new video. I'm actually doing a video on how I update my, basically update on my video game collection of me and my wife. So, just doing the Nintendo part of it, just showing you how I write it down. I do have an app on my phone here that I will mention later on. I forget what it's called, but it's one of those video game apps that you basically look up the games and put it in there, and it'll have like all the info on the games and stuff. So it's a free app. You can probably put as many games as you want. It puts it in by each different category, so you can have it in different categories. Like if you put in Sega, it'll keep Sega Master System. It'll keep all your Master System games there. It'll keep it there. Sometimes they don't have the box art, sometimes to the games, and sometimes you just have to try to. And if you have like games that are like independent games that were made like after this, like stuff that's being made for like the Nintendo now, or people have gone in and done some. Have gone in and done some hacks to the games, different games and stuff like that. That's how they go. That's how they roll, pretty much. So I just thought I'd let you guys see how I do this, and for a little bit, and show you some of the games along the way and everything. Because I know there's a few people out there. I know Reader1717 has done some stuff recently with gaming on her channel. She's transitioned into gaming. I know Reaper Tate has done some stuff, and that he's done a lot of. Anthony's done a lot of stuff on his channel with his gaming years videos, some of his top fives. He's done his comic book stuff, but he's moved into gaming on different things. He's talked about. I think he's talked about the Sega CD that he had, the Sega Genesis, some of the other stuff that he's had, some of the import games that he got, and stuff like that. So he's been showing off a lot of that, PlayStation, some top 5 games that he feels in his collection that he feels are some of the top 5 games that he owns for that system, and stuff like that. So he's done a lot of stuff. I've watched a lot of other people's videos, some bigger channels. Those are just some. I know, OMG Chris, he has done some. Old Man Gamer has gone back to doing a few. He's done a lot of comic book videos, some toy stuff. He's doing cards. He's done some gaming videos of games that he has. I know my other buddy, Art Outy, the great legend, he's been doing some gaming on his channel, and that he does some of that gameplay, so he shows us some games that he's into, that he plays, and that, and then Rebel Gaming, Naomi Comics, LP, Larry Higgins, whatever you want, whatever you want to call him. He's been doing Overwatch for the longest time. I've been watching him do Overwatch and a lot of stuff. There's been some old Nintendo games and stuff done by Maverick Freelance. He has done a bunch of that. Some tabletop gaming he's getting into that he's going to be showing off on his channel. Just to name some channels in our community that have done some gaming. There's probably a few others that have probably done stuff with gaming pickups and stuff like that over a while. I know I've heard Holler Mouse Tim. He has been doing some gaming pickups lately. He's done some movie pickups, mostly comic book pickups, but he's done some VHS movies, picking up some other stuff. I know he's done some stuff with vinyl and CDs and that kind of thing, music. Same thing with Brian Spaceboy 227. He's got a channel. He's got actually a good music channel that him and a bunch of buddies are going to be doing a record. So I don't know. They're going to be doing a Kickstarter for a record, I heard. So I don't know if he's got that up on his channel running yet. Give you more information. Check him out. He's done that. He done some gaming along with Injustice with Rob and LP and some other guys that have done some gaming with them. So there's a lot of people out there that have done gaming and stuff. So I thought I'd do an update on my stuff, show you how I collect it and that kind of thing. I know there's some bigger channels that you watch, but they really don't give you a whole lot of, like, most of them don't give you any insight. They just tell you, oh, this is what I picked up. Or they give you a whole video on their man cave, and half the stuff they get is donated to them because they've been doing it for so long, and they're in the business of games. You know, some of the guys have done gaming. Some of the guys do it because they want to eventually have a museum, like John Hancock, the immortal John Hancock. He wants to do exactly that, and I'm hoping he gets to his point where he can actually show off what he has, put it in a museum, or put it somewhere where he can just have it there to sit there, and he can just have it there on show or on loan somewhere where he can show off the stuff. I know at one of the cons he said he was going to. Don't know if it happened yet or gonna happen or next year. I don't know. I don't know when it actually is, but watch his channel. He'll probably have an update on it. Mortal John Hancock. He's going to be showing off some of his boxed Nintendo, his whole box Nintendo collection that he has. So he's got all that. He's trying to complete some boxes, so he's trying to get any way he can get them donated, bought, however he can get the boxes. He'll try to get them. People have given him boxes, have just given it to him, donated to his channel, said, you know, this is for you. And that a lot of guys with bigger, there's David E. Quai, who does gaming, more newer gaming stuff like PS4, Xbox One type stuff. He does a lot of that kind of gaming on those systems, newer games, that kind of thing. A lot of people do that. You know, they get, that's what this is. But I'm doing more retro gaming myself. I'm doing in the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the Sega, the Master System, the Genesis, and the Sega Dreamcast is what I'm working on now. I'd like to get into the 64, just for a handful of games, maybe find a cheap 64 at some point down the road. Not really looking for it right now. Trying to move some comics out to make some more room for other stuff. I got other comics that I want to keep. I want to keep focus on a couple things. Don't want to get too much into a whole bunch of things. I know a lot of people do that, and they lose focus in one area because they're doing like 50 different things. They're doing comics, baseball cards, movies, DVDs, VHSs, CDs, vinyl, 8-tracks, you name it, they're doing it. Games, all different kinds of gaming systems, like 10 or 12 gaming systems, and they're all doing it, and not one focused part of their existence on YouTube is basically, they're all over the place with all kinds of different things they do. You know, some people do multiples of things, but then they have multiple channels to do the multiple things, but it bleeds all into that, and then they start getting burnt out and doing, like Reader1717 just mentioned today in her video that she was burnt out on comics, of collecting back issues right now. Now, she might go back to that at some point, but, you know, when she decides that she's got to the point where she's done at that. But right now, that's her thing. Her thing is not collecting back issues. My thing is that's what she wants, that's what people want to do, is try to focus. That's what I've been trying to do the last couple times, is focus on one thing and not focus on 50 million different things. Because the problem is, what I've been focusing on for the longest time is bunches of things. Bunches of different comic books, bunches of different titles. And I want to get to a goal in maybe 10 to 12 series that I want to get to a point where okay, I can afford that older book that might cost a little bit more, but that's something that I want in my collection. I don't want a video game. I might want to get a video game someday, but I don't want to be buying up all these little rinky-dink $2 games to have $2 games when I could get, the more expensive game, the $50 game or something, You get the $50 game that I might be able to afford, but if you buy 10 $5 games, there's that $50 you could have spent on that one $50 game instead of paying that. And I mean, it's expensive either way. Comics, cards, sports memorabilia, comic book art, everything seems to be expensive. It's not like it used to be. Video gaming, retro gaming was basically, from what I heard from a lot of people, was like the cheap thing. They were just like, FuncoLand went out of business and just gave away everything. Pretty much from what I heard. I've watched Cinemassacre, the Angry Video Game Nerd, listening to Mike talk about FuncoLand and stuff, and how he went in there and just bought out huge amounts of FuncoLand stuff at Nintendo games that are now going, he said, for $5, $6, $7, $10, $20, $30. Even games that were going even more, that were more then, that are twice as much now. That might have been a $30 game back then in the early 2000s. He said that's how he would get all this stuff for the Angry Video Game Nerd stuff. So a lot of that stuff, and then people sending them stuff and in the collection and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Pat, the NSE Punk, who's got a bunch of different systems. He's pretty much to the point where I've heard he's almost got every Nintendo game that he really wants to have. There's other systems he wants to try to get more for. And he wants to be one of those guys that moves into, he has the book. I'd love to, that's one of the things I like to get is I'd like to get his NSE guide to Nintendo games, And he said he's got a Super Nintendo book that he's thinking about working on. I don't know if he started working on it yet, but he's been talking about it. He does the podcast with his buddy, Ian, and he does the podcast by himself. He has different retro gamers in the community come on there, big-time guys come in and talk about different things and what they feel. A lot of them don't feel there's a crash coming. I feel like if the games keep going up, sooner or later it's going to be outpricing people. It's going to be like what you get with Golden Age and some Silver Age comics right now, where they're hundreds of dollars and nobody can afford them, and the only games you're going to end up with are the games that nobody wants. That nobody wants anymore because everybody's got them. They made a million hoops on, they made a ton of hoops game called Hoops. It's a basketball game for Nintendo. Made a bunch of it. Nobody wants that. You can pick that up for, probably at a flea market for $1, $1 to probably $5, from 1 to 5. There's games like Pac-Man. You can probably pick up Pac-Man unless it's one of the rare cartridge Pac-Mans or one of the rare series of Pac-Mans. But, that's what the fun is going to these flea markets, finding this stuff, going out there, doing what you love. Like Hippies Collectibles always said, he collects models, he does World War II stuff, Civil War stuff, old, coins. He has some old coins. He has just stuff in his collection, old letters, just anything and everything, basically. He has a bunch of comic books, but he always said, the one thing, no matter what you collect, collect what you like, love what you collect. That is the number one thing that I would say right now. That's the number one thing I would say to people out there is, those people are the people you want to meet. That's what you want to do. You want to find something that you enjoy doing and love it to the fullest. And if you don't love it anymore, it's going to get to the point where it becomes a burden on you, and you end up realizing, yeah, I spent, over the years, I probably spent $15,000. I probably spent about $3,000 in comics or something, or whatever you're collecting, $3,000 in comics over 30 years, But now I'm not into that. Now I'm not into that anymore. Now, 30 years later, I'm not into buying those comics anymore or buying those video games. I spent all this money on this stuff. Now it's like, it's been sitting here for 5 years, haven't done anything with it. Not really into it anymore. I pick up a, a book here or there, and that's about it. So, but with me, that's what happened with video gaming. I moved from Illinois to Georgia when I was probably in that phase of, I just got the Sega, I got the Sega Master System. That was my first system I got, was a Master System in '88. This was probably about a year after the Master System came out in '87. So I got it for Christmas of '88. I didn't get the Nintendo. My cousin had gotten the Nintendo in '86. I think he was like 4 when he got it. They had bought it for him when he was like 4 years old. Him and my sister were about the same age. Born in the same year in '82, so he had gotten it in '84. It came out in '84, '85. He had gotten it basically here when it came out. He got it in '86. And that for Christmas or his birthday or something. Can't remember why. And that my other cousins got the Nintendo, so that's what we usually played Nintendo on, was I'd play with them. And my neighbor had the Super Nintendo, the kid next door. He was a lot younger than I was, but we would go over to their house and we would hang out and everything, because his sister was probably a year older than, I think she was either a year or 2 older than my sister, and we would all go over there and hang out. He was way little, but he was tall as can be. But yeah, we used to go over to their house, and our parents were good friends with them and with their parents and everything, and we would hang out, they would have a block party, and we would play the Super Nintendo over there. I'd come over and play Super Nintendo, and then we would play the other thing we would play. I think I was in middle school, I think, at that time, when we'd go over there and play. I think when they moved in and everything. But then I moved in 10th grade to Georgia, and that's when I still had the Genesis. I had just got the Genesis, I think, 2 years before that, before we moved in '94. I had gotten the Genesis in '92, so I had the Genesis. I had those 2 systems basically the whole time. So that's all I collected for or bought from. I actually found out that the guy was closing one of the video stores, and we tried to talk to the guy about buying the Sega games from him that he had for the Master System. And the guy goes, "Oh, they're not mine, they're my brother's." There was a couple that I wanted that he had. He had like Choplifter. He had the game, what was the other game he had? Choplifter I wanted. They had Outrun I wanted. They had Reggie Jackson's Baseball I wanted. There was like 2 or 3 other games that he had on there, and I wish he would have been able to sell them to me. I would have took them all probably for one low price. If he would have said, yeah, $50 or something, he'll sell them for 50 or something, I would have bought them all, because he had probably about 20 games, 20, 25 games. I think he had Pro Wrestling, I think he had Great Baseball, I think it was another game they had a golf game, I think he had, there was just some oddball stuff in there that I would have took, like Ice Hockey, I think it was Ice Hockey, I don't even know what it was called, I think that's what they called it, Ice Hockey. I don't think it was Great Ice Hockey, because a lot of their stuff was great. Most of their games were called Great Football, Great Baseball, Great Basketball, Great Volleyball. That was a lot of their sports games. And he had, I think, Alex Kidd and the Miracle World. That was the game he had, and that was another one I wanted. And a couple other things, but when they went out they just basically sold the videos and stuff, and his brother took the stuff back. They never called us back, so I think we called him. I think he gave us a number to call him, and we called him back right before they shut down completely, and he said he don't know if he's interested in selling right now. He said maybe in 6 months he might change his mind. Gave him your number, so we gave him our number. He said he'd call us if he changes his mind, and he never did, so we never saw. So I never saw those games or anything like that. So basically, fast forward a whole bunch of years, we ended up with the PlayStation when it came out. I think we were living in Georgia, I think, when we got the PlayStation. Yeah, we were living in Georgia. The PlayStation came out when we were in Georgia. I didn't get any of the other stuff, like the Sega CD. My cousin had the Sega CD. My cousin had the Saturn, I think. Or no, he didn't have a Saturn. I think he had the Sega CD was what he got. But I ended up playing the Sega Saturn at my friend's house. I ended up meeting him in college my freshman year and found out that he was staying at his grandparents' house. I guess his parents had divorced or something from Minnesota. I guess he used to live down here years ago and then moved back to, I guess they moved back to Minnesota where they were from. And I guess his parents divorced at some points. They were up in Minnesota, and he decided to come down here. Didn't finish his senior year and came down here. My buddy Eric came down here, came back down here, got his GED through the community college, and that's how we met doing that. You know, he did that, and we ended up meeting up and doing, of all things, horticulture and like landscaping and stuff. And we decided to hang out, and we'd play the boatload of what he had. He had a few games, but mainly we played Need for Speed, Virtual Fighter, and Madden. I think there was another game. I can't remember what it was. There was one other game that he had on there that we played all the time. But it was like those 4 games we just played the crap out of on that Saturn there. And I never really thought about buying a Saturn back then. You know, because we had gotten the PlayStation eventually one year for me and my sister. Because basically the Sega was basically for me. The Genesis was for me. But my sister played it. You know, she was allowed to play it and everything. And then the PlayStation was for both of us, so we both got games for that. And it's somewhere, either I have it or she has it or my parents have it. Somebody has that. And then years later, I had bought years after that, I bought the PlayStation 2. I think in like 06, 07 maybe 08. No, it wasn't 08. It was probably 06, I think. I think it was 06. I can't remember now when I got it, but I think it was right around it was way after it had come out. It had come out, and I think I had gotten it. I know it was before 2008 because I had it before I met my wife and everything in 2009. I had already had it for a while, so I think I had it maybe for 2 years. Maybe I got it in 07. But it was a cheap deal. It was at Target. A decent deal, gave you a gift card with it and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I ended up with, on that end, I ended up with that. Ended up not buying very many games for it. I think I had a bunch of sports games for it. I think I had a James Bond game. My sister had given me a Buffy the Vampire Slayer game. I think I had with it. Ended up selling most of the games, traded the rest of them to a place called Second and Charles. Just recently sold the rest of the system that I had. The system, all the things for the PlayStation 2, because I wasn't using it. I hadn't used it since I had moved in with my wife in 2009. I hadn't used it probably since 2010. So it just was sitting here for 8 years being unused for 8 years. So I was like, I'm not using this thing for 8 years. PlayStation 3 has already come out. PlayStation 4 is out in the meantime. And that's why a couple years ago I sold all the games, I think in 2016 I sold all the games for that games that I could find. I think I sold like 12 games I had, mostly sports games. Sold them at a cheap deal because what do you find PlayStation 2 games for? $1.99 at Goodwill's. You know, so if I sell them for $1 a piece online, you know, and a couple bucks for shipping to cover shipping, and I got like $15 for the whole thing, you know, get 15 for the whole thing shipped. It was a way to get the stuff out of here that I didn't need. You know, I wasn't collecting that. You know, now looking back, I said, if I didn't sell the games, I wouldn't have sold the system, but I would have took more. You know, but you know, most people aren't really looking at PlayStation 2 as much, and I'm not looking at PlayStation 2 at all, and the other stuff. So that's what I was figuring out. But yeah, to get back to this, I'll be showing off some of my stuff here. Just thought I'd do a little intro. Here I'm already in about the 25-minute mark, blabbing here about other stuff. But yeah, I'll be coming back with you guys here in a couple of minutes, showing you guys how I do this and everything. I just thought I'd hit up a quickie, not really a quickie, but I thought I'd hit up a video here and just talk about different things about what I've been doing with gaming and how I did that. Because most of the time, my buddies have gotten into, like, had the Nintendo. But my best friend, he has the 2600. I think he had the 5200, if I'm not mistaken, too. Then he had the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo. Then I think he got something else. After that, I think he got the Xbox, original Xbox, or the 360. One of the ones he's got. But you know, that's what people do. You know, they get the games. You know, I think the only thing Xbox had on it was that whatever that game was. Oh, I forget what it was now. Oh, I don't know what it was, but it was some fighting game. Not a fighting game, it was a military game. Oh, I think they made a movie about it. Can't remember now. Can't remember. I think they're on 5 or 6 of them now. I think they're on in that, but it was one of the biggest games back then that came out on Xbox. It was on Xbox and that, and he would play it all the time, but you know, I was never any good at it. But alrighty guys, I'll get back to doing this here in a minute. I'll post this up and then I'll get hooked back up to showing you the collection itself and everything, because I just want to do a little talk about how I got into it, different things that I watch. I watch different people do different things. I know I watch that one guy, Metal Jesus, and all of his crew. I watch a bunch of his guys on there. Radical Reggie. I keep calling him something else. I keep saying it so fast that I mispronounce the Radical and that, but that's him. I watch him sometimes. I watch John Riggs from over there. I watched Kenzie. There was one other one, but they don't. Some of them don't really do a whole lot of videos. They only do them unless they're like on his channel per se. Like if he has a Patreon question that needs to be answered, he'll drag a bunch of guys in from his group. I watch sometimes. I don't think he's done a whole lot of videos lately, but Drunken Master Paul, you probably know him. He's done those chef shows. I think he won one of them. Forget what it was. Iron Chef? I can't remember, but he ended up winning one of them. But yeah, they did a whole video on how they worked for, how they ended up working for, and how they met each other really through Sierra Online years ago. And that's basically how I got started, was with Sierra and doing video games on the computer. CPU, that's basically where I got started back in the early days, around like 86, and that was about the time that my dad was bringing home a computer from work, and we would do that, you know, 84-ish. I remember playing on the I think it was the Macintosh or the Apple II. Apple II, that's what it was. The Apple II. My neighbor had an Apple II when it first came out. I think that was what the computer was they had. It's like a $5,000 machine or something ridiculous amount of money. They ended up paying for the thing. They bought it. It had the 2 disk drives separate. I think it had the 2 separate disk drives. And that, I don't think they were built into the machine like they were later on, but they ended up having that. They had the monitor. They had the printer. They ended up buying all that stuff. And that was like early 80s. That was like either whenever it came out. It was like right when it came out. That was right when it came out, and my neighbor had that. My good friend at the time, and that had that system, had that, and that was awesome, you know. And then he ended up getting into, later down the road, they ended up getting into the Atari Jaguar, which I won't go into much of that. Everybody knows that was a terrible system and everything. And the Lynx handheld thing, I couldn't get into it. I think he had it for a month, I think, or a couple weeks, and ended up taking it back to the store saying this thing didn't work, it wasn't good, it was just crap, and ended up, I think, returning it for something else. But that's just what happened, you know. And I ended up getting a system one time that didn't work, a little thing, whatever it was that we got early on. But I remembered a lot of the earlier systems, seeing them when I was a kid, you know, because growing up from 78, you know, being born in 78, you know, by the time the video game crash came along, I was like 5 years old. So I had seen some of this stuff as a kid growing up, right around that time frame when I was about 4 or 5, that I remember this stuff, you know. I remember seeing it and seeing people with it. And then when these other systems came out and all this new technology and everything, but alrighty, guys, this is Mr. Gretzky 9966 signing off for right now. I'll get some of this stuff out that I need to, and I'll show you guys what I'm going to be doing here, how I'm going to set it up and everything. I have the app. I don't know if I'll be able to show you the app or anything, so I don't think I have it on the computer here. On the tablet here, but I might be able to pull it up on the tablet there and put the stuff in. But basically, you can find the stuff and all that cool stuff. So, alrighty, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.